up in the hypothalamus and the neurosecretory nucleus, both growth hormone releasing and inhibiting factor will be produced. And how much of each that's produced is based upon what the hypothalamus senses. It's your homeostasis capital. So it can send both at the same time in different quantities. When it gets to the anterior pit, they're going to attach to their specific receptor on the same cell. And this cell is called a somatotrope. If I have 100 releasing hormones here and 50 inhibiting molecules here, what is the cell going to do? It's going to make growth hormone, isn't it? CAMP is going to win out because you got more of this than you do of that. This is releasing, that's inhibiting. Okay? Make sense? Not sure, but it looks on your face. Okay. So, here comes growth hormone. As a result of CAMP, we could go through the steps of CAMP, but we shouldn't have to, because by now it should be burned in your brain. So here comes the growth hormone. Goes into that capillary bed, correct? Is carried to virtually every cell in your body, but especially connective tissue cells. It loves those cartilage, bone, etc., fat. And so when it gets to, when the growth hormone exits, it goes to its target cell, and it attaches to it, and CAMP happens. Okay? These are some of the things specifically that you should know about either what growth hormone does or how it's released. It works by CAMP. It is produced by somatotropes. It goes to those particular target cells. CAMP happens. The sole purpose is to get those individual cells to get bigger and to make more of them. Growth. It is especially prevalent in children. Growth hormone is very much present in large quantities all the way through puberty and a youngish age. As one gets older, less is produced. And not only does it help grow cells and numbers of cells, it also has an effect on the nice supple thickness of the skin. The elasticity, the collagen fibers of skin is enhanced by growth hormone. That's one of the reasons why many of the little old ladies and men in nursing homes, their skin is so thin that all you have to do is hit it funny and it may start to bleed. And that has to do with less growth hormone, but also things such as testosterone and estrogen. All of those hormones are less as one ages. So it's more prevalent in children. It is produced at nighttime while you sleep. That's one of the scientific reasons why when your 4-year-old says, I don't want to go to bed, and you're a good parent, you'll say, I want you to have your time to grow. That's when growth hormone is produced, not during the day. So if you have a short child and you know they have potential to grow, make sure they get plenty of sleep, okay? Plus, you get an extra hour or two of relaxation with somebody else other than a child. That's always nice, you know? I have 4 girls, so I valued my couple of hours now and then. So nighttime when it's released. When it's acting on the cell, of course, it's going to encourage it to make protein because you can't grow cells without protein. And it's going to help free up all sorts of energy. And the energy will be to use for growing, for the metabolism necessary. And then it's going to promote mitosis. It's the most common hormone in your body at any time in your age. It's the most common. All right? There's no growth gland that it goes to. It just goes to cells all over the body. Are there any questions about growth hormone? Yeah.
Can you explain what the 50 and the 100 is?
Well, I had said if growth hormone, releasing hormone, and inhibiting hormone come down here to this cell, it's the target for both. But if you have 100 molecules of releasing here and only 50 here, the one that wins out is to make growth hormone. It's a nice fine-tuning method for controlling that hormone. It's more sophisticated than by having just releasing hormones. Okay? Anybody else? Okay, so the quick thing I want to do is especially pertaining to the supraoptic nucleus. Okay. So, when we did this part, I said, let's call this supraoptic or paraventricular. This is the side where the optic chiasma is. You have this picture. So this is going to be just one of the cells. And this cell is a kind of a cross between, it's a neurosecretory cell. It's a cross between purely secretory and a neuron. So this is actually an axon-like structure. So if this is the supraoptic nucleus, and I'm not going to go into the technical way in which it works in this class, but ADH is going to be what needs to be produced. ADH stands for antidiuretic hormone. That means save your water hormone. Now, if this nucleus experiences an environment where you're dehydrated, let's say you've been exercising and not drinking properly, or you're in the desert or whatever, and you feel thirsty and the whole shebang, that means you're probably dehydrated. And this supraoptic nucleus has a way of detecting that and make these cells make ADH. The ADH is carried down and stored in these little axon knobs, almost like a neurotransmitter, except this happens to be a capillary. So if your body is dehydrated, ADH will be kicked out by action potential. The ADH will go into this close capillary. Now, is it on the short list or the long list? The long list. So how is it going to be carried? All by itself, right? It doesn't have to be carried. And when it gets to its target, how is it going to act? Everybody should be hollering, camp. If you can't do that, that's not a good thing. So, what do you think? What do you think is going to be the target of ADH? The kidney, yeah. What do you want to do? You want to pee more or not? You sure don't want to lose it. You want to save the water that would be in it so it can go back into your blood and you can stop being dehydrated. So it's an anti-diuretic. Our bodies make a little bit of it all the time. But if we make a bunch of it, it's usually because we are dehydrated. That's what happened the night after a party. Not only, it's a double whammy because when you drink alcohol, it goes right over here. And it says, stop making ADH. So you wonder, after you have a beer or two, why you seem to have to run to the jar all the time? It's because you're no longer making ADH. So not only is alcohol dehydrating, but you are also not saving what water you could, so you lose that much more. And then the next morning you have a case of cotton mouth. And water isn't always the best thing to drink. Coke's pretty good. So I've been told. So anyway, but the kidney is the place that's going to save your water, and it's going to save it by the making of aquapores, but we're going to do that when we do the kidney. So do you think you can tell me what superocket makes and what does it, how does it work? Where does it go? Anybody? Problem there? All right. Now we're going to do a hormone. Now I think it's really important. That gland is the thyroid. I really would like to get started also by Wednesday on digestion. Because your test, have I opened up the third study? No. I'll do that today. We haven't been able to get into the system. They're improving the system, which means we have about 2 weeks of nothing. Anyway, because your test will be endocrine, digestive, and respiratory. So we've got a lot to get done. I'd like definitely to get that test out of the way as soon as possible. Our last test is just a little cardiovascular, urinary, and reproduction. That will be handled, of course, in April. So, okay. This happens to be the thyroid gland. It's shaped like an H, and this is the trachea. It lies, it slivers, and if you look in the cat, and I may have pointed this out before, they lie embedded in the connective tissue. And once you pull that out, you'll see the nature of glandular tissue. And this gland is so important to metabolism, personality, ovarian cycles, depression, all kinds of things. It's so, so important. that's why, I don't know if I mentioned this before or not, I can remember, you know, when the females have their first gynecological checkup, you know, it's always a, well, you know, kind of a weird experience. You know, you sit there, but not on, you know, I mean, you got some on, but you don't have something on. And you sit there and the doctor comes in and the first thing they do is go on your neck. And I'm looking at him like, I didn't come for that end of the body. What are you doing? What the doctor's doing is trying to make sure that your thyroid gland has the right feel. Because if it doesn't, they could suspect that you're going to have ovarian cycle difficulties, menstrual cycle difficulties, fertility difficulties. You might also have a weight problem, and you might also be depressed. So, that's what they're doing. And if they don't suspect anything's amiss, then they'll move to parts, believe me. They do that. So, if I took a little piece of this and drew it into larger, you know, kind of magnified a bit. These are nuclei in cuboidal shaped cells. There's going to be a few of them here in this view. And then scattered in between are going to be some follicular cells. And, you know, connective tissue and stuff like that. So this right here is like a round ball of cells. They're called follicles. So each one of these is a follicle. And each one of these cells is called a follicular cell. So the bulk of these lobes are balls of cells. And scattered in between are the parafollicular cells. They are also called fee cells, not fee shells. Inside these follicles is going to be a colloidal suspension. Now, if you don't know what colloid is, that's when you look it up in the second chapter. A colloidal suspension consisting of stuff, but the primary stuff is iodinated thyroglobulin. In 318, the students learn how to go through the formation of the product of this gland in a biochemical way. Here, I just want you to learn the major parts because we don't have time to do that in here. So, stored inside here will be a bunch of these molecules. That's why you have to have iodine in your diet, because this is the only gland that makes something with iodine embedded in it. But the thyroglobulin is a complex molecule, and embedded in this molecule will be T3 and T4. T3 stands for triiodo, thyroid. And T4 stands for thyroxine. Oops, thyroxine. And so the most prevalent one is thyroxine. T3 acts pretty much like it, except it's much more concentrated. When I talk about it to you in this class, I'll always be referring to T4, thyroxine. Thyroxine is made of tyrosine, amino acids, and they're the ones that don't like water. So this is going to act like gene activating. I'll talk about parafollicular later because its job is to work with calcium to make thyrocalcitonin. So, in order for this cell to release T4 as its product, it's rather complicated, and I think going to do this right now. But remember how we have thyroid stimulating hormone, releasing hormone? Remember that? Where does this come from? Where did this come from? Hypothalamus. And where did it go? Anterior pit. And what happened with that cell? Span happened and it made TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. This went into the blood, and here's a capillary here. Here it is. It got out. It's going to attach to this cell, and this is where I don't want to go into detail because it's slightly different than in some other stories, but CAMP will happen because TSH is water soluble. Ultimately, what will happen because of TSH, either T3 or T4 or both, will be cleaved out of this molecule and be allowed to exit, so that I'll just say T4. Because of TSH right here, a series of things will go on here to be learned in 318. But ultimately, T4, or 3, will exit the follicle, enter the blood. Will it be bound or unbound? Bound. And so, when it gets bound, it's carried around to almost every cell in your body, because this is what it's going to do. It's going to go to its target cell. Here's its target cell, whatever it might be. And here it is, bound, bound. It gets unbound, correct? Now where is this going to go? Find a receptor on the outside? It's going to slip right in, but what's it going to look for? A receptor. And then this entity is going to enter the nucleus and whack the genetic whip. And what it's going to tell almost every cell it enters, you're going to be in charge of the breakdown of carbohydrates, the metabolism of your cell, the breakdown for energy production. is gonna happen. It is your metabolic hormone. And that's why some people who have a weight management problem, at least 20 years ago anyway, well, when I was growing up, the excuse for being overweight was, oh, I've got a hormone imbalance. Well, in most cases that wasn't the situation, but at any rate, the reason why they said it is because it does set your metabolism. And some people, they've got really an efficient metabolic machine. They never have to worry about gaining weight. They burn calories efficiently, and some don't. And one of the factors is your T4 level. But it's not the only thing. The best way to know about thyroxine is this. If you study about what's wrong with people when they make too much of it, which is called what, do you suppose? Hyperthyroidism. You probably have sitting in this room some people with a kind of a hyperthyroid condition. The thing that's nice about it is usually you have lots of energy and you burn those calories, so oftentimes you don't really have a serious weight problem. But it has its disadvantages, especially if it gets too high, because you start to eat more because your body says, hey, I need more food. I'm burning up this peanut butter sandwich and banana. I need some more. So you eat more. And when you eat more, your digestive system has to work overtime. And that kind of messes with it. And then, of course, if you have that as a problem, it tells your heart and cardiovascular system that you need more blood to furnish all this. And so that makes your heart beat more often. And you end up not sleeping well because your neurons are so turned on, you don't sleep well. And your metabolism is so high, and part of the product of metabolism is heat, correct? So these individuals are very warm. They can stand at the bus stop in Minnesota in the winter with no jacket on. They're their own furnace. Well, all of this and when I talk about nerves, and not sleeping, you can also get cranky, and neatness. This one person said, oh my gosh, she was going through the spell of hyperthyroidism. She said, my bedroom dresser drawers, my underwear was in order. And I had absolutely no dust bunnies under any bed. Because what else are they going to be doing? They've got all the time on their hands because they can't sleep. So anyway, in time it burns out your system, and it makes the most dangerous part of it all. It makes you suffer from truth-loading anxiety, and secondly, it makes your heart potentially go into tachycardia and arrhythmia. And one of the President Bush, the elder, keeled over at a dinner party, and everybody said, "Ooh, he must have too much to drink." But he didn't. They discovered that he was suffering from hyperthyroidism, and he had gone into this tremendous tachycardia, lost his breath and all this, and keeled over. And so they found out that he needed to take some medication to block all the T3 and 4 he was making. But there's a fine line. You want to have just the right amount of T4 to get your metabolism where it needs to be. And you know, one of the things that helps you do that is, of course, proper diet. But secondly, exercise. Exercise is really the answer to everything practically. Exercise and reasonable eating, everything in moderation. So, yeah.
What does it say next to T3 and T4 on the left?
It says that it's T4 and T3 both. They're made of tyrosine amino acids.
Oh, thank you.
And they work like gene activating. Yes.
I have two questions. My first question is, so whenever a girl is on her cycle, I know for me when I'm on my cycle, I don't get full. I eat.
Well, I wish it were all just that. Yeah, that's going to be the fact that all your other hormones are at play. That's a great example of hormonal. Because thyroxine is high, insulin's going to be high, cortisol's going to be high, progesterone, estrogen's going to be high, and you're going to be on that.
My second question is, I'm almost there. So TSHRH is released to the anterior.
To the anterior pit,
Right, then CAP happens. Then TSH is released into a capillary bed, right? And then it's attached to a target cell.
Well, no, it's carried, it's bound, and then it gets out and goes towards the target cell.
Okay.
Now, does it attach to it or does it go inside?
But it's bound.
Well, it has to get unbound. Before it gets out of the capillary, it gets unbound. So then it slips out, and here's this beautiful target cell. Is it going to hang on to the outside or is it going to slip to the inside? How many inside? Okay, because it is gene activating, because it can slip through fat. But it's got to find a what inside? Receptor. If it doesn't, what does it do? It exits and goes to find another one.
This is the long one.
All right. Yes.
Okay, so can't
Is the colloidal suspension inside of these?
The follicle, the ball of cells. Inside the ball of
The
cells.
molecules are inside the colloidal suspension.
The what?
The thyroglobular.
That this whole big molecule has built into it a small number of tyrosines that will be cleaved out. And do you know what cleaves it out are the enzymes in your lysosomes? But you don't have to know that. It's intriguing though. Okay? Yes.
What is the iodinated, like what is
Iodinated
Yeah.
thyrine is this colloidal suspension that's in here. That's its storage form.
Okay.
Okay? And like I just do want to say that menstrual cycles, fertility problems have a lot to do with one's problems with thyroid hormone. And there is kind of a correlation between problems with maintaining your thyroid levels and depression. And one other. But depression is especially, free-floating anxiety. If you have a little tachycardia, free-floating anxiety, and a little depression, probably it's your thyroid doing that. Get it checked, because no one should have to live with those. Anybody who lives with free-floating anxiety, there is so much that can be done about it. Number one, exercise. Okay, now we're just going to quickly review. We're going to talk about the parafollicular cells right here. These are the ones scattered between. They have no connection with the thyroid's other job. Totally independent. they're gonna be working with the parafollicular glands. You heard of parafolliculars before? Everybody? I mean, I don't know how many of you had this in high school? Anybody had stuff like this before? Okay. God. Okay. Okay, those cells that I showed you in that picture, also called feet, produce, their number one job is to ultimately make sure that your calcium and phosphate levels are low enough. Now, before I tell you how they work, it's important for you to know why that's so important. You have calcium and phosphates and potassium and sodium and manganese and magnesium. These are all minerals, correct? And they are what constitutes your electrolyte balance. And electrolytes must be maintained very carefully. When you go to the doctor or the hospital or the emergency room and you're not well, one of the very first things they test is to see whether all of these electrolytes are in balance. Because, for example, if potassium is too high, you could go into heart fibrillation. If calcium is too high or too low, serious things can happen with your heart. So they have to know this right off the bat. And especially, I knew somebody who went on a weekend dinner down in Padre Island. Nice place, but he was on a bender. And he, not only did he just drink and drink and drink, but he didn't eat properly and he didn't have water at all. And he started going into, he was having some kind of a seizure. They took him to the emergency room and they had to put him on a ventilator. And they took a look at his electrolytes. They had never seen such a mess in their lives. He almost died. He was on the ventilator for a week and a half while they were trying to get him all squared away. So it's very important that you be able to do this on your own without having to worry about it. And so the job that calcitonin, or calcitonin for short, its job is to ultimately make sure that the levels stay a little low. And one way to do that, and by that I mean in the blood plasma, is to go to your class. Now, what do class do? They break down bones, so isn't that making it available? So it goes to them and it says, do not do that. And to boot, it goes to the blast and it says, put it in the bone. So both phosphates and calcium will be lowered. Does that make sense? Everybody who's paying attention still? It's not quite 50 minutes. 50 minutes is max, I know. Yes? Well, the clast is what destroys bone. And if it does, it makes calcium go up, doesn't it? You don't want it to. So it tells the clasts, don't do your job. But it tells the ones that take the minerals out and put them in the bone to do that. So, you see what it's doing? Okay. Somebody else? Okay, the clast is the one that puts minerals in the blood. They're turned off. And the ones that take it out of the blood and put it in the cement, they're the ones that are encouraged to do that work. Now, this is the hormone that works mostly in young children. But once you get to be an adult, it's parathormone. It's also called parathyroid hormone. This is the #1 controller of your minerals as who you are right now. And its job is to do 3 things. Its job is to go to 3 different places in your body. Now, by the way, let me tell you, parathormones made, the parathyroid glands are tiny little balls of cells embedded in the back of your thyroid. They're totally separate from the thyroid. They're just embedded in there. And actually, years ago, they didn't even know it existed. And when they go in and remove somebody's thyroid gland, they wondered afterwards why they were having trouble with calcium regulation. They didn't know they pulled those little glands out and threw them away. So now they know where they are, and they tuck them somewhere else so they can continue to function. But, so read about the parathyroids and where they are. But the #1 production that they make, or a product they make, is parathormone. And there are 3 places they go. They go to the intestine. And is parathormone long list or short list? Long. So how is it going to work? Ham. Okay. Bone and kidney. Okay. Ultimately, the purpose of this hormone is to increase your calcium, but to decrease your phosphate. That is what would be at the top of your little card. That's what you want to do. You notice you want to lower phosphates in both cases. And some astute mind would ask why? Because calcium phosphates that could settle out and form a precipitate. We need to make the phosphates a little less so that that saturation point is not going to be reached. I'll repeat that a little later. But, so, we ultimately want to increase calcium in your blood plasma. So, it goes to the lining of your intestines. And this is going to be what cell? Here's the lumen. What kind of cell is this going to be? Simple columnar cell. What's this? Microvilli. Okay. So this is going to be a capillary. Now, if we drink a glass of milk, it has calcium in it and it has phosphates in it. Well, if we want those two minerals to come in and get into our blood and go around, we have to turn on what vitamin? Vitamin D. That's why you get that's why milk has vitamin D in it, correct? It doesn't, the cow didn't give it to you. We put it in there. So, this parathormone turns on vitamin D so that we can absorb those minerals. Otherwise, if we don't, those minerals are going to end up in the toilet. And you just spent a lot of money drinking milk for naught. So that's one thing, yes.
Would it make sense to take vitamin D if you have low calcium?
Well, if you have low calcium, you want to take calcium and vitamin D. But that's why you drink the milk with the vitamin D. If you take a calcium supplement, by the way, make sure it has vitamin D in it. Otherwise, you're wasting your time. Okay? We're going to start.